All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're tackling one of the biggest stories we tell about ourselves, the moment we supposedly went from wandering hunter-gatherers to settled-down farmers. The invention that kicked off everything we call civilization.
But what if that whole story is just wrong? What if our greatest leap forward was actually a trap we've never escaped? Seriously, let's get into this because the evidence we're finding is forcing us to completely rewrite the story of what it means to be human.
Okay, so first, let's remember the story we all learned in school. It's a really simple, straightforward story. It's all about the inevitable march of progress. Right? The idea is life before farming was tough, dangerous, and short. Then, one day, we figured out how to plant seeds. Suddenly, we had a surplus of food. And with full bellies, we had time to create art, politics, cities, basically everything. It all sounds so neat and tidy, doesn't it? Yeah, there's just one tiny problem with that neat little story. The actual evidence, the bones and the artifacts we're digging out of the ground, well, they tell a completely different and much darker tale. For the average person, farming was a total disaster. And this is where it gets really weird. This is the central mystery we have to solve. If farming was such a home run, why did life get so much worse for the very people who took it up? I mean, just look at this comparison. It's staggering. We can tell from ancient skeletons that hunter-gatherers were actually taller and healthier. Their diet was like a gourmet buffet of meats, fruits, and nuts. Early farmers, they worked back-breaking hours 7 days a week, mostly to eat porridge. And living crammed together meant diseases spread like wildfire. Historian Yuval Noah Harari just nails it with this quote. We thought we were the smart ones, taming nature. But from the wheat's point of view, it was the one that tricked us. We became its servants, spending our entire lives clearing fields, pulling weeds, and hauling water, all so wheat could spread across the entire planet. Wheat won. We lost. So this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Why on earth would anyone or any group of people willingly choose this life? A life of harder work, worse food, and constant sickness. This isn't just some dusty academic debate. It's a genuine detective story about a bizarre choice that changed our species forever. Well, the first big clue, and it's a powerful one, is that this whole thing wasn't about our stomachs at all. It was about our souls. For a long time, the leading theory has been that we didn't settle down for food, we settled down for faith. And this is where your jaw might just hit the floor. Take a look at the date for this site called Göbekli Tepe. We're talking 9,500 BCE. That is thousands of years before the pyramids. It's over 6,000 years before Stonehenge. And it was built by people who were supposedly just simple hunter-gatherers. And these weren't little pebbles they were stacking. We're talking about massive, intricately carved stone pillars, weighing up to 10 tons apiece. Try to imagine moving that without wheels or metal tools. It would have taken a huge, organized effort, and for that, you need an incredibly powerful reason. The best guess? Religion. Pure devotion. So here's the theory in a nutshell. The temple came first. People would travel to these incredible sacred sites to worship. And as these gatherings got bigger and more frequent, people started settling nearby to manage the place. The village literally grew up around the temple. And only then did they have to figure out farming on a massive scale, because they had to feed everybody who was now living there year-round. Okay, so that's a pretty compelling story. But what if we're looking at this whole thing completely backwards? A newer, really radical theory says we shouldn't even be asking about the transition to farming, because maybe there wasn't one single event at all. This idea, which comes from the book The Dawn of Everything, just shatters that old straight line of progress. It suggests our ancestors were way more creative and flexible than we give them credit for. For thousands of years, they were just experimenting. They'd try farming for a while, then go back to hunting. They'd build a city, live in it for a few generations, and then just walk away from it. Nothing was set in stone. According to this idea, early human societies were built on these three fundamental freedoms. You could always just leave. You could tell a would-be chief to get lost. And you could always get together with your neighbors and create a totally new way of living. From this perspective, the agricultural revolution isn't a story of progress. It's the long, slow, tragic story of how we lost these freedoms and got stuck. All right, buckle up, because this third theory is the most dramatic of all. What if agriculture wasn't an invention or a choice, but a desperate act of survival? what if it's what was left after a global catastrophe wiped the slate clean?
Picture this. About 12,800 years ago, right as the world was warming up from the last ice age, the climate suddenly snaps. And I mean snaps. The planet plunges back into a deep freeze. A growing pile of evidence suggests this was caused by fragments of a comet slamming into the Earth. And the fallout was, well, apocalyptic. We see evidence of continent-spanning wildfires. Woolly mammoths and other giant animals vanish almost overnight. And then, as the ice sheets eventually melted, sea levels shot up by hundreds of feet, drowning huge coastlines where people would have been living. Any advanced societies would have been completely erased.
Now, let's put the pieces of this puzzle together. First, you have the cataclysmic impact, then the rising seas that swallow up the best real estate on the planet, and then, thousands of years later, boom, fully formed farming villages pop up in Mesopotamia as if out of nowhere, with no signs of slow development. The theory here is that these weren't inventors. They were survivors, refugees from a drowned world carrying the fragmented knowledge of agriculture with them.
So, what does this all mean? Well, for one thing, it means that the simple, comforting story of progress we've been telling ourselves is dead, and in its place is a much deeper, much stranger, and honestly, a much more interesting mystery. We've got 3 totally different but compelling stories on the table. Did we gather for God and then get trapped? Did we slowly trade away our freedoms for the illusion of security? Or are we all just the descendants of the survivors of a world-ending catastrophe trying to piece it all back together? And this is the most amazing part. We don't have the final answer yet. This isn't just ancient history. We are living through a revolution in understanding our own past right now. Every new discovery, every new sunken ruin found beneath the waves is another piece of this incredible puzzle.
Our own origin story is no longer a straight line. It's a mystery, a maze of choices and accidents and forgotten disasters. The old, simple story is gone for good. And so the real question is, what do you think happened? What's the real story of us?